originated from Liverpool. He made his money, by the way, in Liverpool's slave industry. But Penny Lane became part of Beatle folklore when John Lennon teamed up with Paul McCartney. Eventually George Harrison joined the band, and they found that the three guys all lived very close to the Penny Lane area, certainly within walking distance. They also discovered that they were attending the same colleges next to each other in the city centre. John Lennon was attending the art school at the time, whereas George Harrison and Paul McCartney were attending the Liverpool Institute for Boys, which was adjacent to the Arts College. When they also realised they lived close to Penny Lane, they used to arrange to meet up here most mornings, and they would catch a bus into the city centre to go to college, and they would wait for each other in what was known then as the shelter in the middle of the roundabout. It was a public bus shelter, which we shall see in a moment. All the places actually mentioned in the song Penny Lane we can find at the far end of the lane where we're heading to now. The bank with a banker who never wore a Mac in the pouring rain, that's still here, although it has changed names several times since the 60s. It's now a branch of the Lloyd's TSB Bank, because originally in the 60s it was known as Martin's Bank, but it still remains in the Penny Lane area. The barber's shop where the banker sat waiting for his trim, and where the firemen come rushing in from the pouring rain, very strange. That's still here to this day, although nowadays it is a rather modern unisex hairstylist, but still cutting hair to this very day, and we'll point that out to you in a moment. Now we've reached the far end of the lane, we can have a look at the places that the Beatles actually sing about in the lyrics to the song. As we reach the junction, if you look right over to your far right, you can see the bank over to your far right there on the corner, the Lloyd's TSB Bank. You can see the flagpole above the main entrance there, and the clock above the doorway. That's where the banker, who never wore a Mac in the pouring rain, very strange. A Mac, by the way, for you people from overseas who are not too sure what a Mac is, what on earth he was singing about, a Mac is a short word for the word Macintosh, which basically was a long raincoat, and the banker never used to wear his raincoat even when it was pouring down with rain. Sergeant Pepper's Bistro to your right hand side. Now, until recently this was a Beatle themed cafe called Sergeant Pepper's. It has closed down, and currently it's being restored, and the whole building's being renovated. But until it became a Beatles restaurant, it was actually a public bus shelter and tram waiting station, and it was known by local people as the shelter in the middle of the roundabout. And as we encircle the shelter, over to your left you can see Bernardo's charity shop. Immediately on your left now, the green and white painted shop. Until it became a shop, that was actually a photography studio, and it was run by a man called Albert Marion. And Albert Marion was a good friend of Brian Epstein, the Beatles manager. When Brian Epstein took over as the Beatles manager, one of the first things he decided on was they'd have to have some publicity photographs taken. So it was Albert Marion who was hired by Brian Epstein to make his way down to Sefton Park one Saturday morning, and Albert Marion took the Beatles' first ever official publicity photographs. Now in just a moment we're going to encircle the shelter middle of the roundabout, which of course is now on your right hand side. When you look at it now, by the way, it has changed somewhat over the years. It didn't have that marble and glass facade on the front now. It was just open to the elements. It was just basically a concrete shelter with concrete seats, benches in it. And the further back you sat in the shelter, in the middle of the roundabout, the dryer you kept when it was pouring down with rain. The barber shop that's mentioned in the song, we shall pass in a moment. When Lee drives up the hill now, the barber shop will come up on the left hand side. It's easy to identify because it has a red and white, one of the traditional red and white barber's poles in the window. And it also, if you look carefully, you'll see a photograph of the Beatles and a little Penny Lane street sign. The shop is now called Tony Slavin, ladies and gentlemen's hairdressing shop. So it's now a unisex hairdressing store. But for many years the shop was known as Violetti the Barber. It was run by an Italian barber a gentleman of the name of Mr. Bialetti, and it was Mr. Bialetti who used to cut the banker's hair, and also, of course, he'd attend to the fireman who'd sit waiting for a train. There's us on your left now, the former barber shop. And as we start to climb the hill away from Penny Lane, just coming up in a moment on the right hand side, where you can see, in a moment you can see a yellow bus parked up here. Just before the yellow bus, this road on our right now, where the red car is, on your right hand side now, Newcastle Road. Number 9 Newcastle Road was the first official residence of